We're learning Likkutei Sichot, Volume 2, Parshas Chukat. And we're in Chapter 3, if I'm not mistaken. And so what we saw so far is that Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam each had a miracle happen because of them. And Moshe's miracle was the manna. And Aaron's miracle was the clouds of glory, and Miriam's was the well. And we said that each one represents something else. The manna, that's what we ended chapter 2 with, represents integration, integrated light, or what we call light that fills all worlds. Why is that? Because we eat it, it becomes part of us. So the manna, we also see that it reflects another aspect of the filling light, that it's different for each person. Every person integrates it differently. Okay? The well does not represent the same thing, because water is not integrated into the body. Rather, we saw that water and salt are transport systems in the body. So really what it does is it distributes. It's a distribution system. And the clouds of glory, as we saw, that's what made it easy for them to walk. They flattened the earth, and it prepared their clothing, it cleans their clothing, and all these things. All these things represent the surrounding light that comes from around the person, surrounding him. And it's the same by everyone. And then he said that all three of these aspects are in the Torah also. There's the way that the Torah is inner light. There's the way that the Torah protects a person from to the rest of the person, or in this case to the rest of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people. So chapter 3. So we learned that Torah means instruction, hora'ah, meaning that the Torah is supposed to give us a way to act in daily life. זו בחינה של התורה כפי שנותן בפנימיות כדוגמת המן. יש להבינה וקלוטה בפנימיות כדי לדעת כיצד צריכה להיות התנהגות של האדם עצמו שבני ביתו ובניו אחריו. So I'm going to do this quickly because we already said this. לגבי בחינה זו של התורה בה היא דומה למן, קיימים הבדלים בין יהודי אחד לרעהו, שכן מאחר שהדבר שייך לפנימיות הרי הוא לכל אחד לפי דרכו. So we said that in inner light and the manna is like this instruction. Because each person found his manna in a different way. Right. Each one found a different place. Each one had to work differently to prepare it as food. Okay. So that all of this is going to correspond to the manna. And there were different levels. There were people who found it as bread already, and the people who found it as like flour that they had to grind, and they had to, or not flour, but rather I guess little grains that they still had to had to grind. They weren't ground down enough to become flour, and so on. Each person had something else, and the same thing is true about how much a person needs to learn every day. Right? Every person has to learn at least in the morning and in the evening. The minimum is saying Kriyas Shema in the morning, Kriyas Shema in the evening. But there are people that need a lot more. Okay? People who need an hour in the day, an hour at night. Or some people need 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours at night. Some people need 6 hours in the morning and 6 hours at night. And there's some people who day and night is all the same for them. And they're constantly learning. So there's different types of individuals when it comes to that. Okay. So I'm skipping the rest. הוא הדבר גם ביחס להידורי מצווה, ואף יתר על כן, ישנם הידורים שמי שהגיע לדרגה מתאימה חיה בהם, ומי שאינו שייך לכך אסור לעשותן, משום איך זה כיוהרה, וכיוצא בזה. סתם אדם אסור לעשות כן, ואילו אדם חשוב חייב לעשות. ואם לאו, יש בדבר משום חילול שם חס וחילול. The same thing is also by the embellishments of the mitzvah. And some people, if they will embellish a mitzvah, if they will put on certain type of tefillin, that will be a sore eye, like an eyesore for other people. They won't be able to look at it. Because they say, oh, he's making himself out to be something that he's not. It's called mechze keyuara. That he's aggrandizing himself. But some people, if they don't put this on, then they're not fulfilling even the minimum for themselves. So these things change from person to person. So that's the Torah as instruction. Chapter 4. Inyan nosafish b'Torah. There's another aspect to Torah, again, which now is going to correspond to something else, which corresponds to the clouds of glory, by protecting the person from the outside. שמגיע זמנו של האדם לצאת אל המדבר, וכמובן כאן לכלל העולם הזה נקרא עולם הקליפות בסטרא אחרא, מדבר גדול ונורא אשר אין בו מים, כי אם קליפות, נחש, שרף ועקרב, מגן עליו כוח מסירות הנפש הטבוע בכל אחד מישראל. So it says, how does the Torah protect you? The Torah protects you when you go out into the big bad world. And the world is full of the impurity, of the husks. All these things that are not really needed, but they're there. So the Torah protects you from these. How does it protect you? It protects you by teaching you to have mesirus nefesh, to have self-sacrifice. And this is ingrained, he says, within every Jew. Why is this connected to the Torah? Because every Jew has a letter in the Torah. So the letter in the Torah that you have is basically your connection to mesirus nefesh. That's what he's saying. והרי כשרותו של ספר תורה באה אך ורק על ידי כל אותיותיו. לפיכך יש לכל יהודי הפלקה שמקבלים כוח מסירות נפש למסור נפשו על קידוש השם. So now, what's the reasoning behind this? If the image is that every Jew has a letter in the Sefer Torah, why is that connected to mesirus nefesh? Why is that connected to self-sacrifice? So he says every Jew has to keep his letter intact because he knows that if my letter is erased or even blemished in the scroll, then the entire scroll is blemished and he can't use it. It becomes puzzle. So every Jew has about himself a sense of self-sacrifice that he has to keep his letter intact. He has to keep it the way it is. So every Jew knows that. The problem is that it's known inside and it's not talked about. It's not talked about so much. Meaning usually, especially in our day and age, the way that people look at responsibility is that you're responsible for yourself. You're not responsible for others. And how can I make you responsible for others? But when it comes to the holiness of the Jewish people, so the holiness is only intact when everyone is present, when all the letters are in place. And so it's not very surprising that the world is not, in a certain sense, it's not yearning to hear what the Jews have to say. Because who said that our Sefer Torah is intact? We have a lot of issues with ourselves, and we're not yet ready even, in a certain sense, to be speaking out fully, completely. The Rebbe didn't really go in this direction, but it's something that resonates very strongly if you understand this image, which was why the Rebbe was so adamant about the completeness of the Torah, the completeness of the Jewish people, and the completeness of the land of Israel. He saw these three things as paralleling one another, and if you're lacking in one, you're lacking in the others as well. They all resonate with one another. So if you have this blemish in a letter in the Torah, you also have a blemish in the Jewish people. It's the same thing. So that's what he's saying here, that really the Torah gives you the power of mesirus nefesh. Meaning, if you don't have a feeling that the Torah is a project that we're all working on, and you don't understand you have a part in that project, an equal part to everyone else, including Moshe Rabbeinu, then you don't understand. It's very hard to bring you to mesirus nefesh. It's very hard to convince you that you have to sacrifice yourself, because it's bigger than you. But really, what is the thinking person? If you're able to get a person to think a little, what does he understand? That my life on earth is limited. It's always going to be limited. So what do I want to do with my time? Do I want to do something that is, as people say, I want to enjoy it while I can? Or do I want to do something that has meaning far beyond my limited being? This is called the clouds of glory in the Torah. What? Good. What do you mean the clouds of glory? The clouds of glory, exactly, you can understand. That when everything is complete, then there is a cloud of glory around the Jewish people. People sense this, they understand this. But it's not understood because, in a certain sense, this cloud is holes now. It's not a complete cloud. It's more like mist than a cloud of glory. כשם שעני הכבוד הקיפו וסובבו את כל בני ישראל, מזמן קריאת ים סוף עד שנכנסו לארץ ישראל. ואף את אלה שלקחו איתם את הפסל, אותם הקיפו עני הכבוד. כך יש גם חלק בתורה, הפרט של יש 60 ריבוע אותיות לתורה, שהוא כולל את כל בני ישראל. למין הגדול שבגדולים ועד הפחות שבפחותים, ומעניק להם כוח ותוקף לעבור את המדבר הגדול והנורא, בלי להתרשם מנחשים, שרפים ועקרבים, ולחיות בהלך רוח של מסירת נפש. So he says the clouds of glory have two levels. That's why they're called clouds. The lower level is really dependent on each person attaining self-sacrifice himself, and each of the letters being complete by itself. But why is it called clouds? Because there's another level of the clouds. The higher level of the clouds is not dependent on anything. Of course, that level, you could say that you don't see. It can't be seen externally. So why do we have it? Because it's always there, giving us the ability to reignite that commitment to Torah. And he says that exists by every single Jew. It doesn't matter how low you are and how high you are. It's even as low as the people who took the idol of Micha, Micah's idol that's described in Shoftim. What was this idol? So in Chassidus it's explained that this idol, first of all, Moshe Rabbeinu knew about it. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu knew there was this idol. And it was walking with them, crossing the Red Sea. Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu say, sorry, we're not taking idols out of Egypt? So the answer is that this was an idol that he knew that he couldn't fight at this point. Very interesting. Even Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't eradicate. Even Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't fight it at this point. What was this? So Chassidus, it's explained that this idol was the worship, careful, the worship of fear of punishment. The people are afraid of punishment. They don't serve Hashem, they're not fearful of Hashem. They fear the punishment that Hashem administers. So what are they fearing? They're not fearing Hashem, they're fearing, it's like the image is a person standing with a sword. And you're not afraid of the person, you're afraid of the sword. What a fool. The sword doesn't wield itself. The sword doesn't do anything by itself. It's the person you should fear. The same thing, punishment is not what you should fear, it's Hashem you should fear. Hashem can administer punishment and can not administer punishment, it's up to Him. Right. But it's even lower than Yirat Hatah in a certain sense. It's on the verge. It's described in Chassidus many times as Klipas Noga, first of all, that it's not Yud Kei Vav Kei in the usual sense, it's just Yirat Hatah. It's Yirat Hatah even in the lower sense, because even in fear of punishment, you can still fear the person. Right? But again, the idea is that you're fearing the sword itself, you're fearing the punishment itself. You've detached, and in your mind, the punishment is detached from its source, from who's administering it. And so that already becomes close to Avodah Zarah. And if a person is serving Hashem because he's afraid of punishment, it's on the verge of being Avodah Zarah. And so Moshe Rabbeinu knew that he couldn't, there was no way you could get this, because they were in slave mentality. But it's not just that. It's an ongoing thing. It's not a simple thing at all to eradicate. And so there's a lot of discussion in Chassidus about this idol, because it's a really an early case study of psychology in religion. Because you're saying that, what does it mean that Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't get this out? It's so ingrained in people that it doesn't help to tell them it's an idol, and so they carried it with them. Again, the Medrash that says this in the Gemara, it's in Erchin, I don't remember. Sanhedrin, I don't remember. What does it say? I don't remember. And the Medrash that says it, it doesn't mean literally that there was an idol. And it wasn't physical. Good. Good. Then they made it into an idol. In Shoftim, it's described how it was made. He took gold leaves and he made them. He made it. He fashioned it. So it wasn't. So it's not the. No, it's not that. It's not that pitik. It's not that thing. It's something else. That pitik was something else. But it's in the person's mind, but it's close to being an idol. That's what it's trying to say. That's how it's explained in Chassidus. It's not that this was an actual idol. It's that people were carrying this around in their heads. You can't get it out. It's not so simple to get it out. So even today, it's not clear that it's out completely. I would say that today, if I look at myself and my own fears, so I know that that's what the Baal Shem Tov's father told him, that don't fear anything but Hashem. Meaning, even if you suddenly sense on yourself that you're fearing punishment, you have to melt it down and abstract it back to fearing God. You have to find a way that really. So I'll give you an example. I think this needs a lot of consideration. It's not a simple idea. You know, I told you many times about Reb Usher Freund. So he had heart attacks from about when he was 75, I think. 75 was his first heart attack. He had 5 or 6 until he passed away from it. He died from some kind of a cardiac arrest. In the times that he had a heart attack, he wouldn't go to the doctors ever. Ever. But even when he had a heart attack, he wouldn't go to the hospital. And you know that if you're having an heart attack, first of all, it's tremendous pain. It's scary out of this world. It's incredible pain. And you can't breathe, and you feel like you're dying. So it's true, many heart attacks don't end with death. Many of them, even if you wouldn't go to a hospital, you wouldn't die. But you'd have damage done to your heart. So in the hospital, what do they try to do? First of all, they alleviate the pain. And secondly, they expand the blood vessels. And they stop the arrest, right? They get the heart going again, with a normal rhythm. When you do those things, there's less damage and you can live better afterwards. But also you've saved yourself a lot of pain. If you don't do that, a heart attack can last a day or 2 until you start getting back to being normal. He wouldn't go. What was his description? His description was, this is the Yetzer Hara coming to battle with me. Just think about what this man is saying. He's saying this is not a natural event. There's no such thing as a natural event. That doesn't exist. This is the Yetzer Hara coming to me to battle with me. What do you mean? What do you mean your Yetzer Hara is coming to battle? He means, this I created myself. This is my Yetzer Hara. And it's coming to fight with me. And what does it want me to do? It wants me to fear it. That's the battle here. Who am I going to fear? Am I going to fear Hashem who's on my side, who wants me to do tshuva and get rid of this? Or am I going to fear this thing that's now gripping my heart, as it were, trying to make me go to the hospital? Think of the thought process that's going through his head. He doesn't see it. Every person, like when you feel that pain, you don't know who you are. Just get rid of the pain, I don't care. He is composed enough to come and say, this is my Yetzer Hara, meaning this was created by me. That's what it means. It's my Yetzer Hara. Where did your Yetzer Hara come from? It didn't come from the heavens. You created it because of what you did wrong in your life. And it's now battling me, trying to get me to be afraid of it. It's gripping me like this so that I go seek help with, right? It wants me to worship it. In that sense, he saw hospitals as like a place where you worship the Yetzer Hara.
I don't agree with you.
First of all, with him, not with me. Why?
First of all, if that was true, when the river.
What?
When the river.
He didn't go to a hospital.
They built him a hospital in his office, and they had 250 doctors in it, every machine and everything they want. The river got treatment. The river got treatment, and was looked after. Even if the river was able to say, you know, I'm more sure that there was it, and he was able to control it. Nevertheless, he got. And second of all, the Rambam says quite clearly that a person has to guard his health. So if you're going to just go like that, then you're going to die. You won't be able to serve Hashem.
So now, think about what happened to the Rebbe. I don't know a lot, but I know that at least.
I was there.
Okay, so at least for an hour, during the heart attack, he was still downstairs in 770. He didn't go up. What?
It wasn't an hour. I was there.
Wasn't an hour?
I was watching it.
It was not an hour?
No.
How long?
He said he didn't feel well.
Yeah.
And they told everybody to get out, so they thought there wasn't enough air for everybody to breathe. Nobody knew exactly what was happening. They smashed all the windows between the downstairs and the upstairs, and all the rock fled. I didn't catch at first exactly what happened. And then the Rebbe danced to the Wanakofa with Shag, with his brother-in-law, and then he went upstairs. Maybe 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. And then?
And then they went upstairs, and then they started to make Kiddush. And the doctors came, and nobody, it was all, there were 7,000 people in the small building. We had to go and find the doctors, and the doctors had to come. And to go and get an ambulance. And that's what took the time, not because the Rebbe said, don't treat me.
Mm-hmm.
The Rebbe's treatment was slightly different to everybody else's. The Rebbe was tzaddik, the Rebbe was in control of what was going on. It's from a higher level. He certainly didn't refuse treatment, he didn't move from his room. Until I was there when I came out of his room. On Pasha's North, I saw it, I was upstairs. The Rebbe came out without a forgotten, and he said, I'm sorry, and I was standing in the corridor watching.
Say that. So here you have an example of someone else who saw things.
I don't have any problems with Rosh Hashanah.
What?
I don't have any disagreement with Rosh Hashanah. I don't even know the guy. Right? Never met him. Big tzaddik, fine.
אתה רוצה להגיד קדיש,
So we just have to finish, but the way I see what he did was he fought the fear of punishment. That's what he was doing. And it's a very difficult thing.
It's going to be a very powerful weapon to come closer to Hashem.
No, so that is exactly the opposite.
Not because
No.
I'm frightened of the punishment,
No.
because I'm frightened of Hashem.
I've said
Use the fear of punishment to become fear
But that's
of
exactly what we're saying, that the idol is not using it to come closer to it. You can't use an idol to come closer to Hashem. The idol is fear of punishment itself. That you're fearing the punishment itself.
No, I'm frightened of scaring Hashem.
What? No, so I'm explaining what an idol is.
Well, that's one of the